Brazil, August 1966. Two men were found dead on a remote hillside. They showed no signs of violence. No cause of death was determined. Beside their bodies were homemade lead masks and a handwritten note with strange instructions. More than 50 years later, no one knows why they were there or what killed them. The case known as the lead masks case began with two ordinary men from the Brazilian city of Campos dos Goytacazes. Their names were Manuel Pereira da Cruz, 32, and Miguel José Viana, 34. Both men worked as electronic technicians. They repaired radios and televisions and were known to experiment with basic electronics in their spare time. Friends and family described them as quiet, intelligent, and deeply interested in science, particularly electronics, energy, and radio communication. Neither man had a criminal record. They were not known to abuse drugs or alcohol. There was no history of violence, mental illness, or erratic behavior. On August 17, 1966, the two men told their families they were traveling to Niterói, a city near Rio de Janeiro, to purchase electronic parts. This was a believable explanation, as Niterói had better access to specialized equipment. Before leaving, Manuel told his wife that he would return the next day. He left behind money and personal belongings, suggesting the trip was intended to be short. They boarded a bus together and were later seen buying a bottle of water and a raincoat. A receipt dated August 17th was later found on one of the bodies. This was the last confirmed sighting of the two men alive. On August 20th, 1966, 3 days after the men disappeared, a young boy flying a kite on Morro do Vintém, a hill overlooking the city of Niterói, noticed something unusual. Two bodies were lying side by side on the hillside. Police were called to the scene. When officers arrived, they found Manuel and Miguel dressed neatly in suits. They were wearing raincoats despite the clear weather. On their faces were homemade lead masks, crudely cut to cover only the eyes. There were no signs of struggle, no visible injuries, no weapons nearby. Beside the bodies was a small notebook containing a handwritten note in Portuguese. The note read, 1630 be at agreed place. 8:30 swallow capsules. After effect protect metals. Wait for signal mask. No capsules were found at the scene. The bodies showed no immediate signs of decomposition consistent with a violent death. Due to delays, an autopsy could not determine the exact cause of death. The masks themselves appeared intentionally made. They were heavy, uncomfortable, and offered no clear protective function. Investigators were immediately faced with a mystery. The handwritten note became the most important piece of evidence in the case. The phrase, swallow capsules, suggested the men had taken some kind of substance. However, no pills or capsules were ever recovered. Toxicology tests were inconclusive due to the condition of the bodies. The line, protect metals, raised questions. Why would they need protection from metal? Why use lead? At the time, lead was known to block radiation. This led investigators to speculate that the men believed they were protecting themselves from some form of harmful energy. Friends later told police that Manuel and Miguel had been involved in spiritualist and scientific experiments. They reportedly believed it was possible to communicate with higher beings or access energy through electronic signals. This belief system was not uncommon in Brazil during the 1960s, where spiritualism and pseudoscience sometimes overlapped. However, there was no evidence the men belonged to a formal group or cult. Brazilian police investigated several theories. One was poisoning, accidental or intentional. Another was suicide, though there was no clear motive and no known substance identified. A third theory suggested an experiment gone wrong. No signs of robbery were found. Money and valuables were still in the men's pockets. The location was remote but accessible. There was no evidence anyone else was present. Police questioned family members, co-workers, and friends. No one reported threats, disputes, or unusual behavior immediately before the trip. The case slowly went cold. No suspects were ever identified. The lead masks case remains unsolved because the evidence raises more questions than answers. Why travel to a remote hill? Why wear lead masks? What were the capsules? What signal were they waiting for? The men appeared to believe they were following instructions. Whether those instructions came from a person, a belief system, or their own experiment remains unknown. There were no signs of foul play, yet the situation makes little sense as an accident. More than half a century later, the deaths of Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana remain one of Brazil's most puzzling unsolved cases. Two men followed a plan and never returned.